Huntington Bay stood separated from the rest of the world. Located deep within a lush, colorful forest with beautiful, rushing waterfalls and bubbling brooks, it was a small, peaceful, and happy town filled with genuinely good people. Everyone who lived there had done so within at least the last 8 generations. There were no newcomers. It just worked out that way. Everybody knew everybody, and that was just fine for all of the residents of the bay. But the remote, idyllic town wasn't just loved by its inhabitants. Unbeknownst to those that lived there, Huntington Bay's land was also the envy of the government. The flourishing land, rich in prized resources, was worth billions of dollars. Buried deep within the grounds were precious stone, gems, and minerals that many had secretly plotted for years to possess. And to lay hold the land, the unending, relenting greed that churned in the hearts of those at the top led them to conjure up an evil so macabre that it would threaten the lives of the townspeople that had lovingly lived in and taken care of the land for hundreds of years. Deep within the shadowy recesses of a top-secret laboratory, government scientists toiled with unnatural creations, birthing a menace that would change the course of this town's history. They engineered a breed of birds, alien in origin, whose genes had been tainted by the radioactive fallout from past government experiments. These synthetic, lab-produced birds were a grotesque amalgamation of metallic, midnight black feathers and sinister, glowing eyes that seemed to harbor malevolent intelligence. What emerged were creatures of terror, born from the twisted minds of the unholy alliance between man and unknown forces, Radramorphous hawks. As the sun's orb glowed high above, faithfully bathing Huntington Bay with its warm light one fateful afternoon, the birds were released from their incubation chambers into the iridescent blue sky, quickly turning it an unearthly black. They took flight with an eerie grace, their wings slicing through the air in unnaturally synchronized movements. The townspeople, blissfully unaware of the government's dark intentions, watched in awe and a form of bewilderment as the otherworldly avian swarm circled above. It didn't take long for the first wave of terror to grip the town. The birds, radiating an unnatural aura, began to descend upon the unsuspecting residents. Their beaks, like serrated blades, bore a venomous toxin, and their wings oozed a radioactive poison that sizzled and could upend flesh from bone upon contact. Panic ensued as the townsfolk scrambled to take shelter, but the birds, full of wrath, proved relentless. They swarmed through windows, crept into homes, and perched on power lines, casting eerie, flickering shadows. Their methodical assaults left victims writhing in pain, their flesh blistered and disfigured by the toxic pecks and landings. But it left some worse than blistered as the birds claimed the lives of many unsuspecting victims, leaving melted bodies strewn in the streets in their wake. The once happy town now echoed with the screams of the suffering. As the townspeople desperately sought shelter, they realized that nowhere was safe. These ghastly creations, alarmingly on point, seemed to have an uncanny ability to locate their prey. In their desperation, the residents soon understood the gravity of their predicament. It was not a natural catastrophe, but a deliberate act of terror. In the dimly lit laboratory, the scientists watched through hidden cameras as their God-forbidden creations wreaked havoc. They knew that their duty to the government came at a grave price. one that would forever haunt their consciences. With each passing minute, the town of Huntington Bay descended further into chaos. The once harmonious streets were now scenes of unspeakable horror, and the townsfolk were trapped in a nightmare of their own government's making. As mayhem ensued, a group of keen survivors gathered and banded together, desperately seeking a way to combat the abominable birds. With homemade weapons and sheer determination, they launched a counterattack, vowing to protect their betrothed town from this unnatural terror. The battle raged on throughout the night as the townspeople fought for their lives against the unforgiving onslaught of the radioactive, alien, synthetic, lab-produced birds. The ongoing fight was bleak as the birds, with their otherworldly strength, raged and kept charging forward with the intent on blood. They knew their mission, and they were precise on delivery. At the final hour, a beacon of hope emerged. One of the oldest townsmen was able to run off and dig up an ancient journal that was located inconspicuous to most in the town's library. The journal was full of musings from his great-grandfather, who was himself a prominent and well-respected scientist in his living days. His great-grandfather, wise to not only the government schemes, but about the evil intent of man, had known that one season this day of attack would come. In his wisdom, he had created an effective form of weaponry that would put an end to the deadly creatures and return Huntington Bay to its freedom. The old man quickly gathered the needed materials, ready to unleash the self-destructing poison back onto the angry, feathered mob. They would get a taste of their own medicine. The old man and some of Huntington Bay's bravest occupants, armed with the lethal solution in hand, began to spray wildly and ferociously into the sky and ground, wherever the beaked vertebrae rested. Once touched even slightly, they imploded upon contact, sheets of sharp metal and tracking devices flying everywhere, littering every surface. The birds were no match to their kryptonite and continued to be taken down in large numbers. The once humble, turned bad-ass townsfolk fought all night, breathless, until every last alien force was eliminated, going down like discharged missiles in the twilight. Knowing that the lab upon whence the evil birds were created had to be taken down too, the townspeople used the destroyed birds' trackers to uncover its location and moved at lightning speed to attack, ensuring no future threats would ever compromise their livelihoods again. Putting the den of iniquity to fire, a blinding burst of light lit the night sky. The lab was engulfed in a cataclysmic explosion, obliterating the unleashed twisted creations and their malevolent creators. The town of Huntington Bay, battered and bruised, emerged from the nightmare victorious. The sun, now radiant and undeterred, graced the town in a golden glow. The once ominous creatures reduced to ash, their terrible legacy forever etched in the memories of those who survived. The beloved Huntington Bay stood as a testament to the indomitable spirit of its inhabitants. They had faced horrors beyond imagination and emerged stronger, united by a shared purpose to protect their home and each other. The legacy of the Radromorphous hawks would forever serve as a warning of the depths humanity could sink, but also as a reminder of the boundless power that could rise from the perils of adversity.
I had just turned 29, and life felt a little emptier after Cassie and I had broken up 3 weeks prior. The loneliness was setting in, and I craved some company. My initial thought was to get a dog. I'd always wanted one. But when I walked into the rescue shelter that sunny Saturday morning, the owner, a quirky guy named Frank, led me to a cage with a rough-looking parrot. Frank said, "Meet Max. He's got a bit of a past, but he's a bright fella, and he needs a good home." I looked at Max, and there was something oddly charming about him. Maybe I was just drawn to the idea of something different. I decided to take the plunge and adopted the parrot. Max was talkative and quickly became my companion, filling the silence in my apartment. The first week with Max was incredible. He had a sense of humor, and his funky personality grew on me. But then, things took a bizarre turn. Max started saying strange, dark things that sent shivers down my spine. Max would scream throughout the day and was talking about killing others. He'd furiously flap his wings and would beat himself into his cage. I couldn't understand where these sinister words and crazy reactions were coming from. It was as if he had tapped into something evil. Curious and spooked, I began researching Max's history with my neighbor, who had a huge love for animals and knew the backgrounds on all of the animals that came into the local animal rescue shelter. He himself had adopted 7 different pets from the shelter himself in the past, so I knew he'd have the scoop. And what I uncovered was chilling. Max had once belonged to a notorious serial killer who had fled the country when the authorities closed in on him. The parrot had been left behind in the killer's apartment, which happened to be the scene of many gruesome murders. Max had witnessed it all and had absorbed the darkness from those horrors. I confronted Frank about this disturbing revelation. He confessed that he knew the parrot's history but hadn't disclosed it, fearing that I wouldn't take Max in. Frank had been desperate to rid himself of Max's eerie presence. Despite the freaky turn of events, I decided to keep Max. I really liked him, felt a strange bond with him, and believed that he could change. So I reached out to Cassie's grandmother, who was known for her spiritual gifts. She performed a cleansing ceremony on Max to rid him of the malevolence that had tainted his past. The cleansing ceremony was a success, and the weight of darkness lifted from the parrot. He transformed before my eyes, the light in him shining brighter than ever. Max's dark utterances ceased, and he became the cheerful, fun parrot he was when I first met him. It felt like it was a fresh start for both of us. Not only did Max return to his friendly self, but something unexpected happened between Cassie and me. The shared experience brought us closer than ever before. We realized that the argument that had driven us apart was just a bump in the road, and we were stronger together. We rediscovered our bond and decided to give our relationship another chance. With a newfound sense of unity, we faced the world, a little family bound by an extraordinary parrot and a love that had weathered the storm. And in our little corner of the world, we found solace, love, and the understanding that sometimes the most unexpected choices lead to the greatest adventures. Life had taken a turn I could have never expected when I adopted that parrot, but it was a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, there's always a glimmer of hope and the potential for a fresh start.